Good day. In today's video, we will be discussing Philippine taxation. Let's discuss the objective of this topic. Number 1, analyze the concept of tax. Number 2, identify the distinction of tax from toll. Number 3, appreciate the importance of taxation. Alright, so I'd like you to look into our screen. Now, you will notice here several pictures that are related to our topic today. You have here a bridge, a hospital, a school, and of course, roads. So the question is, what is the relationship of the pictures to our discussion? Now, all are product of taxes. Alright, so let's proceed to the next slide. What is tax? So taxation is defined in many ways. Commonly heard definition include: number 1, it is the process by which the sovereign, through its law-making body, raises revenue used to defray expenses of government. Number 2, it is a means of government in increasing its revenue under the authority of the law, purposely used to promote welfare and protection of its citizenry. Alright, so going back to the question, what is tax? Tax are revenues collected by the government coming from taxpayers, and those revenues may be in cash, or maybe those revenues are in cash actually. Alright, next. It is the collection of the share of individual and organizational income by government under the authority of law. The concept of tax. Taxation is inherent power of the state to impose and demand contribution upon persons, property, rights for the purpose of generating revenues for public purposes. Now, when we talk about tax or taxation, these are the responsibility of the state or the government to impose contribution upon persons, property, or rights for generating revenues for the public purpose or for public purpose. The power of taxation upon necessity and is inherent in every government or sovereignty. So it is the duty and responsibility of the government to collect tax. The distinction of tax. Tax distinguished from toll. A tax is demand of sovereignty, while toll is demand for proprietorship. Alright, so tax is paid because of one's responsibility to its state, while toll is the demand for proprietorship. So toll is a form of payment that goes to or that goes directly to the one who owns the business, probably. A tax is paid for the use of government's property, while toll is enforced by the government or private individuals or entity. So a tax is used by the government, while toll may be used by either the government or private individuals. Tax distinguished from penalty. A tax is intended to raise revenue, while penalty is designed to regulate conduct. So this is the distinction between penalty and tax. So tax, these are money collected to increase the revenue or the source of fund of the government, while a penalty is a form of payment to regulate conduct, probably by a certain company or government institution. A tax may be imposed by the government only, while a penalty may be imposed by government or private individual. So a tax is imposed by the government, as mentioned, and a penalty may either be imposed by government or private institution or private individual. Okay, moving forward. Tax distinguished from debt. A tax is based on law, while debt is based on contract. So a tax is based on law, meaning there is a specific solid law that supports the imposition of tax, while debts is based on contract. So debt in Filipino layman's tongue, it's utang, is technically based on contract. So if you purchase a car and it's an installment basis, so you are in a form of debt. So you have to pay monthly uh, you have to pay your monthly dues for your car. So it's a form of debt. You will only be free from the debt of the mortgage of your car after your full payment of your car, of course. A tax may not be assignable while debt is assignable. All right. So what do we mean by assignable? So there are also exemption when it comes to tax, while debt is assignable. So assignable meaning um, uh, assignable, it is designated to a particular person or a particular group of business. So again, debt is assignable. So meaning it is based on who uh, who was the debtor. A tax is generally payable in cash, while debt is payable in cash or in kind. So tax is generally payable in cash, while debt is either you may pay in cash or you may pay in kind. A person may be imprisoned for non-payment of taxes. So that's why the guidance of a certified public accountant is needed, especially for those business entities that are really big. So technically, what's the responsibility of the certified public accountant in business? They are the one responsible for checking the bank records or the bank transaction or the bank books of each company. If the company adheres to the guidelines set by uh, the commission on audit. All right. So or the Bureau of Internal Revenue of our government or private institution, of course. Oh, a person may be imprisoned for non-payment of taxes, but any person may not be imprisoned for non-payment of debt. All right. So you may not be imprisoned if you will not pay your debts, but of course there are also, it depends on the one who whom you ask for a debt. So there are possibilities that it might go into court, especially if the debt uh, is uh, that long. So it really depends on the situation. Next, you have what is the history of tax? All right. So in the long history of all nations, so technically taxes are used to support the colony. Now in other cases, several taxes on monopolies were established. Here in the Philippines, you have the tributo, which could be paid in cash or in kind. For example, in kind, you can pay it in tobacco, in the form of tobacco, chickens, produce, golds, blanket, cotton, rice, or other products depending on the region of the country. Next, you have, there was the bandalya from the Tagalog word of mandala, a round stock of rice stalks to be threshed, an annual forced sale of requisitioning of goods such as rice. Or, and of course, the other form of payment of taxes during the Spanish period here in the Philippines, the polo y servicios. All right, if a Filipino during those time cannot pay taxes, either he serves the government in the form of polo y servicios, or he gives uh, to the government his or her property. Purpose and significance of taxes. All right, you have the primary purpose. It generates funds and revenues used to defray expenses incurred by the government in promoting the general welfare of its citizenry, and of course public expenditure. So primary purpose of taxes, these are used as a source of fund by the government, of course, to uh, promote the general welfare of its citizenry, and of course public expenditure, yung pagkagastos. Other purposes, to equitably contribute to the wealth of the nation, so to add to the financial wealth of a country. Next, characteristic of tax, it is enforced contribution. So meaning, um, the government, it is the obligation of the government to impose it, and it is the responsibility of the citizen to pay for it. It is generally payable in cash. So a tax is technically payable using cash or money. Number three, it is proportionate in character. What do we mean by proportionate in character? So a tax is dependent is or a tax is, or the amount of tax paid by a person or a company depends on the amount of income, or the amount of amount of income a person receive annually or monthly. So the idea is, the more income you receive, the more or the higher taxes you have to pay for the government. The less income you receive, the lesser you have to pay, the lesser taxes you have to pay for the government. Okay, right? Next, it is levied on person or property. So it is not only, taxes are not only imposed to persons but also to property. For example, if you purchase a car, you have to pay for the taxes that the government allotted for it. All right. So if you're not working, if you're a student, but you continuously purchase food, purchase products, and avail those junk foods, uh, technically you're paying the value added tax uh, that are included in each item that you purchase. All right. It is levied by the state which has jurisdiction over the person or property. So, in a much simpler term, for example, here in the Philippines, each city has its own jurisdiction when it comes to imposing real property tax. So, the real property tax paid by the citizen of that particular city is dependent on the appropriation of the local government unit. All right. Next, you have, it is levied by the lawmaking body of the state. So the taxes uh, are created, of course, none other than the Congress of the Philippines, or the lawmaking body of the state. It is not the president who imposes taxes, but the one who creates how much taxes should be imposed to people, property, etc., are Congress itself, or is Congress itself. It's levied for public purposes. So all the taxes that the people are paying, that the government collects to people, property, etc., these are used for public purposes, hopefully. Next, classification of taxes. Number one, as to subject matter. Personal, you have poll or capitation tax. Example, residence tax. So, number two, as to who bears the burden. Direct tax, income tax, indirect tax, buying of goods and services. So, explaining further the classification, as to subject matter, you have personal, poll or capitation tax. Now, if you're working, or if you are intending to work in the future, one of the requirements, if you get employed, is this residence tax. Now, the residence tax is uh, appropriated or collected by the city, and there are instances that the residence tax is also collected by the barangay. All right. Now, of course, property tax, real estate tax, for example. All right. Next, number two, as to who bears the burden, or who will be paying the tax. In a simple layman's term, you have the direct tax, income tax. So, if you're a worker, so the Bureau of Internal Revenue deduct monthly a specific portion of taxes that you have to pay for them, and that these are called direct tax or income tax. Now, indirect tax, example, buying of goods and services, or RVAT. Now, as mentioned a while ago, if you're not employed but you patronize certain product, or you purchase certain goods and services, those are indirect tax in the form of RVAT. Next, you have, as to purpose, you have general tax, almost all taxes, and you have special tax. As to scope, national tax, example, national revenue taxes. All right, so uh, you have local tax. All right, so what are those national revenue taxes? Those are taxes that are collected by the national government to uh, persons, property, etc. You have the local taxes as mentioned, those taxes that were collected by the local government unit. Okay, next, principle of taxation. Fiscal adequacy means that the sources of revenue taken as a whole should be sufficient to meet the expanding expenditure of the government. Regardless of business, export taxes, trade balance, and problems of economic adjustment, revenue should be capable of expanding or contracting annually in the response to various variations of public expenditure. Fiscal adequacy. So, meaning all the taxes, now in all time, there should be a source of revenue uh, for the government, because this source are used by the government to support programs and projects that are given to the beneficiary, which is the people itself. Right? There must be fiscal adequacy, enough source for it. Next, number two, equity or theoretical justice means the taxes levied must be based upon the ability of the citizens to pay. So, equity or theoretical justice, meaning the taxes that the government will impose to its people is justifiable to the amount of income, or justifiable to the amount of income to of the people, and of course the property. Administrative feasibility. This principle connotes that in successful tax systems, such as tax should be clear and plain taxpayer, capable of enforcement by an adequate and well-trained staff, public office, convenient as to the time of manner payment, and not unduly burdensome upon discouraging to business activity. Alright, administrative feasibility. So it only means that there should be a systematic tax system, and should be clear and plain to all taxpayers. So there should be a systematic payment of taxes that is clear to all taxpayers. Next, you have consistency or compatibility with economic goals. These refer to taxes or tax laws that should be consistent with the economic goals or programs of the government. These are the basic services intended for the masses. So, all taxes should be compatible to the economic goals of the government. So meaning, um, you collect taxes based on based on based on the alignment of the the government should collect taxes based on the alignments of economic goal. All right. So government should not collect burdensome taxes to its citizenry if the income of its citizen is not adequate. Yan. All right. Next, we have here tax exemption. These are some of the beneficiary of or beneficiaries of tax exemption. When we talk about tax exemption, these are the one exempted in paying taxes. Number one, religious institution. All right. So churches uh, are exempted in paying taxes. Charitable institution, for example, bahay ampunan, so foundation, these are exempted in paying taxes. And most big companies use foundations to uh, to uh, receive exemption from taxes. And these foundations are in the form of corporate social responsibility of big companies. So instead of paying for high taxes, they use foundations, and whatever they spend on that particular foundation are uh, reported to the Bureau of Internal Revenue for tax exempt. All right. Non-profit and non-stock educational institutions. Non-profit cemeteries. Government institutions are exempted from paying taxes. And of course, foreign diplomats. So when we, who are foreign diplomats? These are ambassadors of a foreign country, business executive that has a role with uh, government transactions. Yan. How to pay tax? How to compute income tax in the Philippines? Computing the income tax expenses and payable is different from individual and corporation. Taxable corporation may be taxed using fixed income tax rate. On the other hand, if you're a self-employed professional or an owner of a single proprietorship business, your income tax expensive is computed using a graduated tax rate. It is progressive tax which rate increases as the taxable amount increases. This means that the higher the taxable income you have, the higher your income tax. So, again, the concept of paying one's taxes is based on how much you earn or how much your company is earning. So, the idea, the higher the taxable income, the higher your income tax. Okay. So, these are personal exemption. You will be exempted on this particular amount if you belong to this category of people. Single or divorced without dependent, 50,000 pesos a year. A year po ito ha. This is on a yearly basis. Number 2, head of the family, 50,000 pesos. Alright, next number 3, married individuals, 50,000 pesos. Okay, government budget and expenditure. In national income accounting, government spending, government expenditure, or government spending on goods and services includes government consumption and investment by state. Government acquisition of goods and services for current use to directly satisfy individual or collective needs of the members of the government community is called government financial consumption expenditure. Ideally, the expenditure of the government is uh, bound in the idea of uh, tripness. I forgot the term. All right. Anyway, later on I will remember it. Government acquisition of goods and services intend to create future benefits such as infrastructure investment of research spending is called gross fixed capital formation or government investment, which is usually the largest part of the government. So gross fixed capital formation or government investment, which usually is the largest part of the government. Now, our government does not only rely on the taxes coming from the people, it also invests its sources or source of fund in the form of gross fixed capital formation. Now, why invest? Why invest? Now, same with business. The very reason why a businessman invests for a specific business or property is technically to enlarge the source of revenue or income of the company. Same with the government. That's the reason, and that's the main purpose why the government invests on a particular government project. Okay, source www.tvm.gov.ph, National Statistic Coordination Board. So, to sum up our discussion, what is the importance of taxes to an ordinary people or an ordinary Filipino citizen? Now, if used wisely and properly by government officials, taxes that are collected from the people are used for the services for the people themselves. So, the idea is to collect it. The government should collect all the taxes religiously to not only to not only to uh, individual income taxpayer, but also to those big business uh, here in the Philippines. And of course, proper spending and proper government investment and expenditure uh, will uh, will maximize the use of the taxes collected to its people. It's very important to the government because it is the source of fund of the government. With that, class dismissed. Bye.